Hey, Prentice here, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the squat. Now, the squat is one of those movements that all of us do at some point during the day. I mean, we can squat as it relates to running and jumping. If you think of running, it's a series of single-leg squats in which you have to balance and propel yourself, and that's especially evident when you sprint, when we dance. Some dancing requires you to get into the squat positions. And any sport that has any degree of running and jumping. And depending on where you are in the world, the squat's important to use the toilet as well. So this is a very important movement. Now, I understand that there are many different ways to do the squat as the exercise. So the power lifter, for example, isn't going to do the squat in the same way that a ballerina would do a plie. So there's some specific differences as it relates to sports, but a couple of things that there are overlying principles in the squat that all of these various sports, different activities share. And I want to go over that right now. The first thing is that to some degree, the knees stay over the center of the foot when you squat. Now, when the load gets heavy, you'll see that shift slightly because you don't have an advantage with your glutes so much down at the bottom of the squat. So you do have your inner thigh muscles, so you'll see that very slight variation, and then you'll drive to a point and then finish that movement out. What I'm talking about is as you squat, you see this real medial stress. Okay, so that's something that we want to avoid. And when you're doing a good squat, regardless of the activity, your knees stay over the center of your foot. The other thing that happens is that you hinge from your hips. Now, the difference between the squat and the deadlift is that as you deadlift, your knees aren't bending as much, and you're usually getting down to the floor to pick something up. That deadlift is initiated with a hinge. Your squat also is initiated with a hinge. So we're not just dropping down, we're sitting back. If you imagine that I'm standing in front of a clock here, for a deadlift maybe I'll hinge and I'm sitting back to 9 o'clock. For a squat I'm going to hinge and maybe I sit down to 7. That movement is initiated with the hips, then my hips and knees start to bend equally. Another thing is that the spine is neutral. And we definitely don't want to overarch to carry a load, nor do we want to flex too much, although there are some sport-specific conditions where that would happen. Most of us aren't carrying around boulders, but if you are one who enjoys carrying boulders, you're going to have to flex your spine a little bit to get that boulder, to pick that boulder up. But again, that movement, that flexion that happens isn't a whole lot. So and one more thing is that when you stand up, you're going to drive through your heels and make sure that when you finish the position, all of your checkpoints, your kinetic chain checkpoints are in alignment. So your feet are going to point where they're pointing, but your knees are going to line up over the center of the foot, not too far inside or outside of the foot. The pelvis, and this is what I'm talking about here, you're not going to keep that rear end shooting back. It's going to line up over the knees, over the feet, over the base of the support. Your shoulders are going to be in a neutral position, and what I mean is that if you take the center of your shoulder here, it's going to be in alignment with the middle of your trunk. So we're not here or anything like that. And the head is going to be stacked over those shoulders. Okay, so those are all the commonalities of the squat, and that doesn't matter if you're a power lifter and you get in here with a wide stance, or if you're a dancer in the first position here and doing a plie. Those are some of the commonalities that happen with the squat. So now let's take a look as it relates to this exercise. I'm going to take a kettlebell here and clean it and just do a front squat, load it on one side, and stand back up. Take a look at that from the profile. Okay, so the first thing that we need to make that happen is little ankle mobility. If I don't have mobility in the ankles, I'm going to get that from someplace else. Maybe my feet are going to turn out more than they need to. I'm going to roll in onto the insides of the feet, and as a result, that may move my knee over to the inside of the foot. We don't necessarily want that. So this is an exercise that you can do from the half kneeling position. Just do a little ankle rock. Grab the front of the ankle and grab the heel and just rock forward. Keep the knee over the center of the foot and just rock back and forth until you feel that area loosen up. You can also do calf stretches. Lining up with the wall here, lining up with the feet together, and using that same movement, flexing my ankle. I'm going to lean in here into a calf stretch. I'm going to keep the glutes tight, tighten those quad muscles up. The next thing that you can do is now we're going to find out the width. And to do that, just going to get into a frog position from yoga. Keep the knees at 90 degrees. Get down on the floor, forearms parallel. And then I'm going to rock back and forth. So you can adjust your knees. You can make them as wide or as narrow as you need to. Depending on what you're squatting, you're going to move anywhere from shoulder width to slightly outside shoulder width. But I want to see if I can get into a full range of motion without letting my spine flex. So open up as wide as I need to, just keeping that parameter shoulder width to slightly outside. And once I find that position in which it's comfortable, I'm going to take this drill and take it up to a standing position. Not going to worry about the back yet. And just make sure that I can keep the knees over the center of the feet. And do that a few times. Next, I want to get into this hinge. So, there are a couple of ways to do that. We can start with, similar to yoga, half lotus position. You can see I didn't pass yogi school, but I'm working on the mobility of this position as well. Just going to sit here, cross legs, take one leg, keep the knee at 90 degrees, place the shin on top of the thigh. Keep a nice straight spine, and then just kind of hinge at the hip. Let me turn to the side so that you can see me. You just kind of hinge the hip. I'm not going to round the back. Inhale, exhale, and just kind of pull yourself in there. If you can't tolerate this position, just go ahead, lay down on the back, get into this figure 4 position, and go ahead and pull your leg up. That'll help you open up those posterior hip muscles so that you can hinge a little bit easier. Now, the other side of the hinge is I need to be able to, once I stand up, drive into the lockout position. So to do that, first thing I want to do is make sure that my hip flexor muscles aren't tight. So just go ahead and get in there, 90, I'm getting a half kneeling position here. Start 90 degrees with the front leg, 90 degrees with the back leg. Tuck the pelvis under, or this may be called a posterior tilt, and squeeze that glute. You're going to feel a stretch in the front of the leg. Make sure that your shoulders are stacked up over the pelvis, and which will be stacked over the knee. Okay, after a few sets of that, once you feel that open up, we're just going to take it to the floor and do a simple bridge. The feet are flat, roughly hip to shoulder width apart, and I'm just pushing through the center of the foot and coming up until the hip is in extension, and I really want to clench those glutes. Lower and up. The next piece is actually working on the hinge. So for this, you can take a trusty stick, a broom will work just as well. Broom, Swiffer, whatever you have laying around there. And I'm going to stand with my feet shoulder width apart, place this stick on the rear end. Make sure that my rear end is touching mid-back and the back of the head. And then what I'm going to do is just sit back here and stand up. And as I move, I want to make sure that everything stays touching the stick. So here's a little detail. Now, since I'm squatting, I don't want to look down with a load on my back or when I'm carrying something. So always keep your eyes at the horizon. Right now, I'm looking about a foot and a half off the floor, and when I stand up, I'm looking at my eye level. Here, eye level. I don't want to jack the neck up doing that, and nor do I want to look down. So you can use a stick to pattern that movement. The last thing that we can do to work on that lockout position is just to practice a simple plank. Again, feet are going to be shoulder width apart, and just look at yourself in your device to make sure that you're neutral. We don't want high bottom and we don't want to sag here. Just get in a nice neutral position, tighten the glutes, brace your abs, tighten your quad muscles. And try to get as tight as you can in this position. Don't want this to be an endurance event, so a couple of sets of 30 seconds are enough. And then once you feel that you're in the optimal position to do a squat, go ahead and practice the squat. Start with your body weight first. Start with your body weight. And once you can do a few sets of 20 repetitions, you can move into something like a light kettlebell or a dumbbell. Take the light kettlebell, hold it, get your width. We don't want to be too wide nor too narrow. Just find something somewhere around shoulder width and sit down. Nice straight spine. Drive through the legs, stand up to that lockout position. And that's it. It just takes a little bit of consistency. It takes a little practice. Of course, if something hurts, definitely don't go into that range of motion and go ahead and get that evaluated. But work on these exercises and try to get into that squat pattern comfortably. You know, take it, try to breathe in each transition, because if you can breathe in there, you own that position. You're not going to stress out and do anything crazy. Again, keep the knees over the center of the foot, hinge from the hips, keep a neutral spine, keep the eyes on the horizon, and brace those abs so that that spine stays stable. And when you stand up, lock to the lockout position, squeeze those glutes. In a future video, we're going to go over a few squat variations now that you have that. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you next time. Train Spark.